Welcome back, Music Maniacs, to another episode of Gibbs Drops the Needle, your one-stop spot for all things music. It's the end of the week, so we're going to go through the charts for the week of August 1st of 2026. That's right, it is now August, another month of the summer down. My wife is a teacher, and I have two kids in school, so they're starting to feel the pressure of having to go back to school here in the next few weeks. So summer just flying by for us here. Let's get into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 again for the week of August 1st of 2026. At number 10, we have I Just Might by Bruno Mars. Last week, this was also number 10. It's peaked up at number 1 and been on the charts for 28 weeks. Moving down a spot is Man I Need by Olivia Dean. Last week, this was number 8, has peaked at number 2 and been on the charts for 48 weeks. Taking a significant dive here is Be Her by Ella Langley. Last week this was the number 3 song. It's peaked all the way up at number 2 and been on the Hot 100 for 23 weeks. Moving up a couple spots is So Easy to Fall in Love by Olivia Dean. So she's had a song that's moved down, but another one that's gaining popularity here. Last week this was the number 9 song. Peaked up at number 5 and has been on the Hot 100 for 43 weeks. Moving down a spot is Dracula by Tame Impala and Jenny. This is one that has been steadily climbing up the charts, and now it seems to be falling back down in the charts just a little bit. Last week this was the number 5 song. It peaked up at that number 5 spot and has been on the charts for 43 weeks. Also moving down a spot is Hate That I Made You Love Me by Ariana Grande. Last week this was the number 4 song, peaked at number 1 and has been on the charts for 8 weeks. Moving up a few spots is I Can't Love You Anymore by Ella Langley and Morgan Wallen. Last week this was the number 7 song. It has peaked here at this number 4 position and been on the charts for 13 weeks. Also moving up a few spots is Boston by Stella Leftley. Last week this was the number 6 song. It's peaked here at this number 3 spot and been on the Hot 100 for 16 weeks. Staying put at number 2 is I Knew It, I Knew You by Taylor Swift. Last week, as I mentioned, this was also the number 2 song, peaked at number 1 and has been on the Hot 100 for 7 weeks. And still holding that number 1 spot is Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley. It has been on the charts for 40 weeks now, and I believe, if you remember the story that we did last week about it tying some songs for holding the number 1 spot by a female artist with no male being credited, I believe that now breaks that record that we had mentioned last week. So a very history-defining week for Choosin' Texas and Ella Langley. Moving over to the Billboard 200, which is the albums. The top 10 here starts with One Thing at a Time at number 10 by Morgan Wallen. Last week this was also the number 10 album, has peaked at number 1 and been on the Billboard 200 for 177 weeks. Climbing back into the top 10 after dropping quite a few spots. I think when we first started doing this was hovering around the number 10 spot. And now it is back in the top 10. At number 9 is Erarang by BTS. Last week this was all the way down at number 26, so has definitely moved up the charts quite a bit this week. Has peaked all the way up at number 1 and been on the Billboard 200 for 18 weeks. Moving up one spot is Thriller by Michael Jackson, so I thought maybe the popularity was wearing off a little bit there with Michael Jackson at least staying in the top 10, but it appears that there's a slight resurgence this week, moving him up another spot. He's peaked at number 1 with Thriller and been on the Billboard 200 for 728 weeks. Taking a significant dive after debuting at number 1 last week is The Real Me by Future. As I mentioned last week, this was the number 1 album and has peaked up at that number 1 spot, been on the Billboard 200 for 2 weeks. So that initial debut momentum did not last long for Future here. At number 6, staying put, is Iceman by Drake. Last week, as I mentioned, this was the number 6 album, peaked up at number 1, has been on the Billboard 200 for 10 weeks. Also staying put is The Great Divide by Noah Khan. It has peaked all the way up at number 1, been on the Billboard 200 for 13 weeks. Staying put again is Dandelion, Ella Langley, peaked at number 1 and has been on the charts for 15 weeks. Also staying put is I'm the Problem by Morgan Wallen, peaked at number 1 and has been on the Billboard 200 for 62 weeks. And your number 2 slot is also staying put. You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love by Olivia Rodrigo. It has peaked at number 1 and been on the Billboard 200 for 6 weeks. And your number 1 album this week, debuting at number 1, is Daughter from Hell by Gracie Abrams. Obviously debuting this week, that's its top position, and has been on the charts for 1 week. We will see if it can continue to hold that number 1 spot this next week, or is it going to follow Future's album and kind of die off after that initial debut? Moving on to the Global 200. The top 10 for the Global 200. At number 10 is Swim by BTS. This moved down 1 spot. Last week it was number 9. Has peaked at number 1 and been on the charts for 18 weeks. Moving down a few spots is Stupid Song by Olivia Rodrigo. Last week this was number 6, peaked at number 1, and has been on the Global 200 for 6 weeks. Moving down a few spots as well is Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. Last week this was the number 5 song, peaked at number 1, and has been on the Global 200 for 154 weeks. Staying put at number 7 is Dracula by Tame Impala and Jenny. We saw this one go down a spot on the Hot 100, but staying put on the Global 200. It's peaked up at number 2 and been on the Global 200 for 41 weeks. Moving up a couple spots is Beauty and a Beat by Justin Bieber featuring Nicki Minaj. Last week this was the number 8 song, peaked at number 1 and has been on the charts for 15 weeks. I find it interesting that another one of these old songs is kind of regaining popularity as we go week to week, at least on a global stage. Moving down a spot is Wonderwall by Oasis. This is another older song. Last week this was the number 4 song, has peaked at that number 4 spot and been on the Global 200 for 51 weeks. And a re-entry, so it has fallen off the Global 200 altogether, and now it is back on the Global 200 charts, and that is Normal by BTS. As I mentioned last week, it wasn't even included in the Global 200, and this week it's all the way up at number 4, which is the peak position for that song, and has been on the Global 200 charts for 14 weeks. So BTS gaining quite a bit of popularity there this week. Staying put at the number 3 spot is Choosing Texas by Ella Langley. This is your number 1 on the Hot 100 and number 3 on the Global 200. It has peaked at that number 3 spot and been on the Global 200 for 39 weeks. Staying put at 2 is Hate That I Made You Love Me by Ariana Grande. Last week this was also number 2, as I had mentioned, peaked all the way up at number 1 and has been on the Global 200 for 8 weeks. And also staying put, your number 1 song on the Global 200 is Day Day, the FIFA Cup World official song by Shakira and Burna Boy. And it's been on the Global 200 for 9 weeks now. So even after the World Cup ended, you're still getting significant popularity from the song here. And our final chart we're going to go through is the Artist 100. So the most popular artist right now as a whole. Your number 10 artist is Bruno Mars. Last week he was also the number 10 artist. Has peaked all the way up at the number 1 spot and been on the Artist 100 list for 608 weeks. Also staying put is Taylor Swift. She's peaked at number 1 and been on the charts for 626 weeks. Luke Combs stays put as well at the number 8 spot. He's peaked at number 1 and been on the charts for 490 weeks. Noticing a trend here is Noah Khan stays put at number 7, peaked at number 1 and has been on the Artist 100 for 155 weeks. Drake also stays put at 6. He's peaked at number 1 and been on the charts for 628 weeks. Michael Jackson staying put at 5, peaked at number 1, has been on the Artist 100 for 540 weeks. Ella Langley staying put at 4. Last week, she was also number 4, as I had mentioned, peaked at number 1 and has been on the charts for 98 weeks. Olivia Rodrigo also staying put. She has peaked at number 1 and been on the list for 226 weeks. And moving into the top 10, finally getting a new spot here. Last week, she was all the way down at number 42, and this week she moves up to number 2, is Gracie Abrams. She has peaked at this number 2 spot and been on the Artist 100 for 105 weeks. A surge in her popularity, no doubt, probably being credited to her dropping that new album that debuted at a number 1 spot on the Billboard 200. And your number 1 artist this week, the week of August 1st of 2026, is Morgan Wallen. Last week he was the number 2 artist, has peaked at this number 1 spot, and been on the charts for 385 weeks. So those are the charts for this week, and that's all I got for you this time. Please like, subscribe, follow, do all the good things to help me out, because I really appreciate that. Until next time, I'm Gibbs. This is Gibbs Drops the Needle. Stay safe and be kind.